Crew. Can you hear me? I'm on? So yeah, it's interesting. It's a great intro. It just reminded me when you said crack. You know, people think all we do is crack. I think anytime a patient says that, crack, I said, that's what you wipe and what you smoke. We don't do that here. So you have to try that one. So here's the deal. So I've got the lunch crowd. Dr. Tony's coming up after me. The last thing I do is speak slow. So, you know, it's going to be a challenge, right? So like the calories are setting in, the adrenals are kicking out. So I am going to make sure I set the stage for Tony. That's my number one job, right? Dr. Tony is to set the stage so that I even said I may go 10 minutes, he goes 30, because we go through science and you can't do it in 20 minutes. So, but I'm going to give it my best shot. In fact, here's the deal. I'm going to start with a story that I've never told. I've spoken, all over the world. I'm somewhere probably every other week, somewhere in the country or world. I've never told this story, and the reason why I haven't is because it's never hit me as to the importance of this story to me. So when I say I'm thankful for back pain, I would argue that a lot of you could relate. I'm thankful for back pain. I'm thankful for back pain. Why am I thankful for back pain? Is because that's what actually got me into chiropractic. Unlike, a lot like probably a lot of you and a lot of patients. Back pain. When I was 16 years old, I had back pain, and that drove me, after, again, doing a bunch of other stuff that didn't work, drove me to the chiropractor. But let me tell you, at that moment when I was 16, and this is the part that I've never told, is that, so I come from a big family. I've got 7 brothers and sisters, 2 of which are medical doctors. I've got a sister's an occupational therapist. My 2 brothers are medical doctors. My mom's been a nurse for over 35 years. And I'm the middle of 8 children, so I'm the 5th of 8. My brother Tom, who's the second oldest, when he was 13 years old, he decided that he was going to be a professional baseball player. And up until that time, he loved everything from cake and cookies and sugar and all that stuff, right? But he decided, and I don't know really what inspired this, I think he saw a video of Herschel Walker, which was his hero. And he decided, I want to be a professional athlete. And he stopped everything cold turkey, literally at 13, not another cake, candy, cookie, nothing. Because he was so committed to being a professional athlete. And I say this story because I'll even tell you a specific example. So I remember I was probably 8 years old, and I was watching, we were at home, my mom was making dinner. It was probably 5 o'clock in the afternoon, my mom's making dinner, and I vividly remember that she was drinking a beer, and she would pour some of the beer into the goulash that she was making, apparently for flavor. And I saw this, and I told my brother Tim, who's 2 years older than me, and then at the dinner table that night, Tim decides to share with the table what Mom did to the goulash. And I'll tell you this is an important story because, so my brother Tom at the time that wasn't going to put a chemical in his body, at this time he was 17 years old, wasn't going to put a chemical in his body, got up from the dinner table and left and ran away. Like, literally, my dad tried to run after him, ran away. Was so upset that my mom would do such a thing. And he didn't come back that night. My dad found him the next morning in our van in the front yard, slept in the van that night. And I tell you this because what I was reminded of this in the past couple of weeks is exposure. When I was 16 years old, I was exposed to chiropractic because I had back pain. My brother Tom, who did put a chemical and literally lived that way for 15, 20 years. Went to college, played baseball, tried to make it in the big leagues. I'm telling you this, but listen to what Tom ended up being. A pharmacist. Not because Tom's a bad guy or not smart or not even open, but because Tom wasn't one thing. He wasn't exposed. He wasn't exposed. He was never exposed to the principles of chiropractic. He was never exposed to this thing that you and I love so much and literally believe, as Bruce eloquently put it this morning, it could change the world. And I say that from a place to remind you today, in my 10 minutes here, 15 minutes here, is to remind you that the world is an exposure away. And the only way they're going to be exposed is by us. The only way the world hears the information that we heard this morning from Dr. Lipton, and the way they're going to hear it is through who? Me, exactly, right? It's through us. And so I just am very encouraged because we have a lot to expose them to, right? And I also believe that there's a place and time, and that time being 2018, where, and I'll keep saying it, and I've been, enough people saying, oh, it's not, this is the reason why it's not so bad. See, I believe that there's never been a better time to be a chiropractor. And I will continue to say that next week. I'll say the same thing because I'll believe next week, based on what I see, what the evidence I see, the people that are coming towards us. But it doesn't mean it doesn't come with challenges. So about a month, no, it's 2 months ago now, I went to an event. I paid $59 for this event. I went to a packed crowd in an auditorium of about 4,000 people. And I even took this picture. People thought it was weird. I took this picture out the front when I got in because it was standing room down about a block down for people to try to get in. And I say that because the name of the event wasn't about how to lose weight. It wasn't about how to get rid of your back pain. It wasn't about how to overcome cancer. The name of the event was The Healing Self. The subtitle was There's a Revolution in Healthcare Today, and the revolution is you. And sure, as you know, Dr. Deepak Chopra, he's a celebrity, right, in the space of natural health and healing, right? But the bottom line is, I paid $59 for my ticket. You couldn't get a ticket for under $45. Most were going from between $50 and $100. And over 4,000 people showed up. I tell you that to say that I do believe that people want what we have. But what haven't they been? They haven't been exposed. You see? They haven't been exposed. And if there's anything we take away from this weekend, because we're going to hear from the greats, right? Dr. Havoc and Dr. Bruce, and you have Dr. Murphy. I mean, you know, Dr. Koch, who, so eloquently, nobody speaks like he does. He's such a mentor and friend, and he did such a great job. And so but it's our job to take it, right? So the last Rubicon conference I was at was in Geneva, Switzerland. And part of it, the first part, we went to a couple days at the World Health Organization. And we sat in the big room at the WHO, and you could see there, Dr. Riekman is there, Dr. Klum is there, and there's a guy named Dr. Villar, right? And Dr. Villar gets in this room, and he had a PowerPoint prepared for us. And what he was going over, and he had a slideshow. And his slideshow, and this was like his second or third slide, he wanted to make sure that we knew, as chiropractors, that health is not about how you feel, but it's rather a complete state of physical, mental, and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease. So we're all looking at each other, right? Like, he didn't really know what chiropractic was, and maybe everything there has to do with chiropractic. But I tell you this because some of the profession is afraid to go into communities and say, you know what? Health is not about how you feel. But if you had one of the largest organizations in the world behind you saying, no, we completely support the fact that you don't need a symptom, you don't have to feel bad, right, to have something wrong. And so this is the cornerstone of our philosophy, very simplistic, but the cornerstone of our philosophy is that health is not about how you feel. Right? I argue there's three things. If you were writing down three things, I'd write these three things. You've heard them over, but my perspective may be a little bit different. Number one is the body's amazing, and I'm going to hit on why and give you an example of that. I mean, we don't need any more after what Dr. Lipton went through. The body is amazing, right? That's number one. The body is incredible, and it's self-healing, and it can heal itself, right? Simple, but profound. The second one is health is not about how you feel. And then the third one is there is an intimate relationship between the spine and the central nervous system that is undeniable in any level of research, science, or academia. I proposed this to audience because I've been on this kind of kick that if all chiropractic went away tomorrow, not another adjustment, not another chiropractor, not another student, not another school, everything, it all went away tomorrow. Does the relationship between the spine and the central nervous system still exist? Right? Does the relationship between the central nervous system and human health still exist? You see, so often, and I've been, guilty of it, so often we go into practice and we think that we've got to carry this big thing that I'm going to go prove to people what this thing's about. I got to prove to you this thing called chiropractic. But chiropractic is just an acknowledgement of life and laws, universal laws, as Dr. Koch put it. It's an acknowledgement of that, and then the science that backs it up explains why we get such unique results that nobody else will get. And when you combine that with the fact that you don't have to have a pain or a symptom, especially in your spine. You start to actually stack the deck in your favor with the science and with the philosophy, and then the practice of it being the art. But if we don't own this, again, as I've been, a big proponent, is I could give 10 of you the same exact things to say, and you would all get different results. Because it's not about the words that's coming out of your mouth. It's when I cut you open, what comes out? Do you believe what you're saying? Do you understand the magnitude of what we're dealing with, right? And I know you do, and I know we do now, right? Because Dr. Bruce told us this morning. So to combine that, right? So World Health Organization themselves, still to this day, 1948 is when it was set down, that definition, and they still subscribe to it today, as Dr. Villar said. Which, side note, Dr. Riekman asked them a question when we were there. He said, what percentage of your resources are allocated towards promoting that philosophy and or that definition across the world? And he said less than 1%. So again, whose job, right? Exposure. People haven't been exposed. And then you combine it with this. Health is what? Health is, right, not how you feel, but then look at this. Posture affects and moderates every physiological function from breathing to hormone production, American Journal of Pain Management. So posture influences every aspect of health and human performance, and function. Health is not about just how you feel. Then you see how spine and postural health, you can't have health without having spine and You see, you have to connect the dots. So often because I speak about science and research, and I go through some of the evidence, people always say, well, do we have a study for this, or do you have a study for that? Every week. There's not a week that goes by I don't get asked that question. I say, we have something better than research. It's called science. And you start to understand the science, the simple science, right? It explains why everybody from a day old to 120 years old deserves the right, to have access to what you and I know and have experienced with our own lives, right? So here's it, and you guys know this. I had to throw these in there just because I've been a little bit eye-opened by some of the stuff. Do you know that 100 million people currently, over 100 million people self-admittedly experience pain every day? Chronic pain, 100 million of them, right? It's the number one cause of disability worldwide is spinal pain. The effects, you see the cost there. Nearly 25% of all opioid prescriptions are given for low back pain. The Institute of Medicine, the FDA, and the CDC all recommend, get this, they all recommend first and foremost that they would not do pharmacological first. That you would not just give drugs first. So the question is, who's telling the doctors? Why don't they know this, right? So I say that in terms of opioids. Why? Because if there's a reason to get people in the door, then let's get them in the door. Right? If you know anything about me, the last thing I'm talking about is, it's not about the back, it's about the brain. So, but when I see this, there's an opportunity for us to say, hey, when there's a need and we could fill that need, we can also take them to where you and I, why we experience chiropractic, right? And that is, 1 out of 3 Americans take opioids. You guys know some of these numbers. $4.1 billion spent by Medicare alone on opioids, just on opioids. That was 2016. 1.9 million Americans are addicted. 175 people die per day. But here's actually a kicker. 63.4% of opioid users start because of physical pain. So what if? Right? So what if? And this is, again, the thing to me that I get, all that's cool, and we know we can change things, and if we could just, but if 63.4% of them start because of physical pain, think of this as a mother, right? Think of this as a mother. And this mother got started because of physical pain, and then she never got off them. What's statistically going to happen if she has another baby? Her baby is going to be born what? Addicted. Every 25 minutes a baby is born that suffers with opioid withdrawal, accounting for $1.5 billion in healthcare charges. Every 25 minutes a baby is born addicted to opioid drugs. And here, Dr. Tony's going to talk about taking care of kids. Here at the end of this, we got to clean up the mess, right? And there are probably women out there that love it and are addicted to it, and they didn't want to come off. But I argue this. There's a lot of them that didn't want it, never chose that path, but were what? Never exposed. You see? Right? Never exposed. And so this stuff is the type of stuff that gives me. So then a study came out in 2017, the end of last year, Journal of Complementary Alternative Medicine, chiropractic patients shown to use 55% less opioids than non-chiropractic patients, right? The evidence continues to pile up that we know. And again, to me, the best evidence is what we see every week, right? The best evidence is what some scientist is going to tell you. The best evidence is what you get to see a human being experience. And the evidence is clear. We got 122 years worth of evidence that is better than any research study will ever do. But we have to make a story of it. I'll keep this story short as I close up with a couple things here. So this was 2 years ago. I got picked for jury duty. And long story short was I ended up getting picked. I tried to say I couldn't go, ended up having to go. And this was downtown Atlanta. And I go for jury duty, and I ended up in the whole, like, it was crazy. I ended up getting picked. And then I got 60, one of 60. And then I got down to 13. And I ended up getting on this jury, not for a fraud or some sort of shoplifting. It was attempted murder, 2 second-degree murder charges. And so I tell you this because I sat through this 3.5 days, and at the end of it, here's what happened. At the end of it, so I sat with 11 other jury members in that jury box right there. And at the end of it, it wasn't about the stats. It wasn't about the facts. It wasn't about the doctor's testimony. It wasn't about the bullet holes. It wasn't about the guns that we saw. It wasn't about the pictures. Everything. It wasn't about that. What it came down to, all those were facts and witnesses and testimonies. But at the end of that session, 2 human beings called attorneys got up and told their version of the story and exposed us to what we think we should believe and what we should choose based on their interpretation for us. And what hit me in that moment, everything is chiropractic to me, right? It hit me at the moment. It was like, man, we got all this evidence. We got 122 years worth of evidence. We got all the science and testimonies and research. But what matters most is your story. What matters most is you be the attorney every single day in your office. What story are you telling, right? What's the story, right? Here we are. This was us in the back. What's the story, right? And so I tell you that because, man, as I close up in a brief period of time, the greatest doctor, guys, if you hear nothing, like, the greatest doctor is not the one up the block giving shots, not the one down the block giving drugs, and surely not the one in your office giving adjustments. You hear me? The greatest doctor is not the chiropractor giving adjustments. Where's the greatest doctor? Inside, right? There it is at 6 weeks. Look at this. At 6 weeks, I blew that up. 6 weeks. You don't see bones there yet, right? You don't even see organs there yet. That's a central nervous system. That's what you impact every single time you make an adjustment. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. We talked about this morning, RNA and DNA and changing, and the proteins are changed because of the signals. You change signals. And the way you get to change signals is because you expose people to the truth. Right? I didn't create this poster, which is something that is thousands in offices across the world. I didn't create it so a patient would understand, wow, I'm glad I know what the spinal hypothalamic pathway does to my adrenals and my fertility. No. I want them to look at that and say, wow, I didn't know. Doc, I didn't know. I thought you went to school in a strip mall, right? No, I didn't know you knew all this. I didn't know it was impacting this. I didn't know. And every time they get a look at that, guess what they get? They get a little bit of what? Exposure. You see, the theme today is exposure. Don't fool yourself or kid yourself or downplay the benefit and the power of your exposure in your office. And I'll leave you with this, right? There's a couple of my girls. That was before we had our little one. And then less than a year ago, right? I don't check my baby girl named Honor. Her name is Honor, right? I don't check her, as you see here. I don't check her because I'm worried about an ear infection. I don't check her regularly because I'm worried about her future neck pain and preventing that. I check her because I know it's the right thing to do. Because I was what? Exposed to the truth that when there's no interference from the brain to the body, or the least amount of interference, she's got the best possibility at expression throughout life. And I want that the same as my daughters and my wife, the same as yours and everybody in our community. And just like all the speakers this weekend, we have a job. And I argue the number one job is to expose the people. So I love each and every one of you. God bless. Have a great weekend.